and welcome to Murphy's Garden, and rather excitingly you join us today from the RHS Chelsea Flower Show. So come with us as we explore the show and get lots of ideas to take home to our own gardens. If you live outside the UK or you can't make it to the show, don't worry, because we are here to show you around and hopefully you will feel like you're with us. So we'll begin at the beginning. We've just entered the gates and we head down Eastern Avenue, which is lined by beautiful stalls selling all sorts of things, from pieces of art, ceramics, garden equipment and anything else you can think of. There's a buzz of excitement and it is crowded, and I know a lot of people don't like crowds, but this is a very different crowd. It's a crowd of like-minded plant people who have converged to see something very special. There are all nationalities, lots of different accents from around the world, but I've never witnessed any impatience or unkindness. Everyone is here to have a great day out, and I personally love the banter and the chance to chat to other people. One stall holder I spoke to described it as being with your own people and being with your tribe, which I thought was so true. There is so much to see that sometimes, especially when you first visit, it can all be quite overwhelming and difficult to know where to even begin. The main showground is made up of Main Avenue, where the 8 show gardens are located, and then there is Royal Hospital Way, where there are another 8 gardens referred to as sanctuary gardens. In addition to these, there are also 3 feature gardens, and as well as that there are balcony and container gardens, the houseplant studio, and that's just outside. The Great Pavilion is vast and has another 5 gardens called the All About Plants Garden, so there really is a plethora of ideas and inspiration. But rather than trying to discuss each and every garden in detail, which would make for an extremely long video, I thought we could look at general concepts and ideas portrayed in some of the gardens this year. So the first clear takeaway for me after looking around the show was that water featured in many of the gardens this year. For a long time, gardeners have recognised the benefits of adding water to a space. It adds tranquility, reflection and attracts nature. In this feature garden entitled Chelsea Repurposed, we see a recycling of elements from Chelsea gardens of the past, and we can clearly see the importance water has played over the years, with designers finding creative ways to incorporate it into their designs. The Ecotherapy Garden by Tom Bannister won Gold Medal and Best Container and Balcony Garden. Imagined as a small London courtyard, this compact urban garden encouraged total immersion in nature, with a cold plunge pool at its centre, reflecting lush planting all around and the sound of running water to drown out traffic noise. The Stroke Association's Garden for Recovery features a wildlife pond and stream with a bridge across it. Water in this garden is used metaphorically to symbolise the mental, emotional and physical connections that have to be rebuilt following a stroke. Many of the gardens featured waters in pools, fountains or ponds, but some designers at this year's show chose to take the idea of using water a step further. Recognising that we're experiencing a pattern of extremes with long periods of wet weather and lengthy periods of hot, dry weather, these gardens aim to build resilience into the design. Collecting rainwater when it falls to use later during periods of drought clearly makes perfect sense, but rather than just storing water in a water butt as is the norm, why not make a feature of it? One of our favourite gardens, which had this theme at its heart, was the WaterAid Garden designed by Tom Massey. This garden, unsurprisingly, won a gold medal and is Tom's 4th Chelsea garden, and we just loved it. Jian, a celebrated architect, designed the large lapped steel funnels which rise gracefully and act a bit like a canopy from Tom's resilient planting scheme. The garden was designed as a physical manifestation of design ideas from Tom Massey's book Resilient Garden, and demonstrates how we can make our gardens and green spaces more resilient, promote and support biodiversity and be more adaptable in a warming climate with extreme weather conditions such as heat waves or excessive rainfall. It demonstrates ways in which we can sustainably manage water runoff. Sculpture on this scale could be overwhelming, but in this garden the 11-foot structure looks fantastic. But even better than that, it captures and filters every drop of rain, storing it for use later. The pavilion canopies help control the flow of water, slowing it down, and the swales and channels within the design redirect the water within the landscape. The pathways are formed from these raised steel decks, which are themselves fully permeable, strong and durable, and allow space for water and wildlife to move and plants to grow. The plants are all chosen for their ability to thrive in various conditions, from very wet to very dry. The finish and the planting in this garden was beautiful, and I know a lot of you will want to know what the plants are. We've got Sanguisorba here, we've got the primulas, lots of things that we recognise, irises, but I will leave the QR code in the description if you want a full list of the plants, and especially the ones which were difficult to see but looked lovely were the ones on top of the funnels. Sometimes we think modern day problems require modern day solutions, but looking to the past can often provide answers too. In the next garden, a Roman garden, by the show's main sponsor, the Newt, we journey back in time to the 1st century where the Romans teach us a thing or two about the benefits of water. A colonnaded Roman courtyard similar to those found in ancient Pompeii features plants that would have been used in Roman times, from opium poppies to chamomile to lavender and yew. The central garden is encircled by a water channel and demonstrates that the Romans were far ahead of us and understood in the 1st century the need to store every drop of water for all sorts of uses. As well as collecting rainwater for bathing, drinking and irrigating plants, moving water through the air all around also acted as air conditioning, lowering the air temperature by several degrees. This garden was noticeably a lot cooler from other gardens on the show, and with dripping water all around gave the garden a very relaxed and soothing feel. Although absolutely beautiful, the scale of these gardens may seem a little unattainable in our own domestic gardens. You may not have room for a large funnel or Roman columns. However, the theme they convey is relevant to a more domestic setting. The Flood Resilient Garden by Naomi Slade and Ed Barnsley was designed in recognition that 5 million homes in the UK are at risk of flooding. And this sanctuary garden aims to illustrate how any outdoor space can be adapted to cope with heavy rainfall. On a more relatable and achievable scale, this garden typifies a domestic family garden and shows us how simple steps can make a big difference. If the majority of gardens in a neighbourhood built resilient features and water storage capacity into their design, then the risk of flooding would be significantly reduced. 1 in 4 properties are at risk of flooding, and yet 87% of UK households have a garden and so can do something to lower that risk. Removing hard surfacing and adding dense planting will soak up water. Ponds, streams and tanks will hold water for later use. There's a lot to see, a lot of ideas in this garden. It's packed full, but it feels quite achievable, I think, and it feels homely. You can imagine sitting in this seat and enjoying the garden. I particularly love the use of chains. This is a novel way, instead of guttering, of directing water from the pergola above down into these storage tanks. I really like that. And we see the theme of water management again reflected in the container and balcony garden, the water-saving garden designed by Sam Proctor. This garden demonstrates that even in a small space, methods to capture, store and reuse water can be really effective and affordable. And it also has the added benefit of reducing maintenance. What's not to like about that? I especially love the high-end modern clean finish of this garden with the copper-coloured chain, guttering and lights, and with picture frames it gives this garden an inside-outside feel, most suited to an urban space. The next theme we will look at is colour and how it can be used to create different effects. The first garden, the National Garden Scheme, was designed by Tom Stuart Smith. We're already familiar with his work from when we visited RHS Garden Bridgewater. This garden is completely different from that garden, which uses strong, vibrant colours to create a prairie style of planting. But here we see Tom use a very limited colour palette of whites and greens to give a calm feeling and a sense of connection with nature. This garden will be relocated to Addenbrooke's Hospital, and as I know only too well from having worked there, is a hectic clinical environment devoid of green spaces. This garden will be a welcome tonic for patients and staff alike, allowing them to escape from that environment. At the same time, this garden is a celebration of the joy and sense of well-being that gardens give to people, the achievement of creating something of natural beauty, combining planting and design skills with a sense of place, and is the thread that runs through the story of the National Garden Scheme. The plants, many of which were donated by garden owners, reflect a natural feel and a sense that this is a real garden and not a designer one. A hazel coppice provides a canopy under which is planted a wide range of woodland perennials tolerant of drier conditions. One of the most striking plants was this white rhododendron divisii and white foxgloves digitalis purpurea albiflora, and lots of cow parsley Anthriscus sylvestris. The next garden is the Stroke Association Garden for Recovery by Miria Harris. This garden uses colour differently. Designed to be a peaceful space, the garden uses a soft, mellow colour palette, but the garden is designed to be sensory and aid recovery for those affected by stroke. A complementary colour block planting scheme of pink, orange, yellow, purple and green hues guides visitors along different routes through the garden. And as we've discussed, the addition of water brings its own benefits. Lapping signs provide soft wayfinding for those with visual or mobility impairment. The next garden is the Octavia Hill Garden by Blue Diamond with the National Trust, designed by Anne-Marie Powell, and this is Anne-Marie by her garden. Pioneering social reformer Octavia Hill, who was the founder of the National Trust, believed that the healthy gift of air and the joy of plants and flowers were vital to everyone's life. This is so true, and yet 1 in 3 people in Britain don't have access to nearby green, nature-rich public spaces. The planting in this garden is designed to stimulate and is exuberant and rich. The combination of these two colours is absolutely gorgeous. The dark burgundy red of the poppy, which is Somnifera dark plum, and the other one is called Lauren's grape, and it's next to this orange Colutea ex medius copper beauty, together with the purple allium. I think it's a real winner. And by the way, you can click on the QR code in the description for a full list of all the plants, and I will provide QR codes for as many of the gardens as I possibly can. We then see this lovely colour combination repeated with purple and orange plants under this tree, and we've got here Geum totally tangerine, and then Astrantias. We've got Astrantia burgundy manor, and then Astrantia major Roma, all placed alongside ferns and grasses, and I think you'll agree this just looks absolutely beautiful, really lovely. And the tree, I think you'll agree itself, is absolutely beautiful, and it's a Carpinus coreana. There's a bit of a story with this tree which I will come on to in a bit. Colour in gardening isn't always about the plants, and in this garden, the World Child Cancer Nurturing Garden by Giulio Giorgi is designed as a sensory haven and aims to bring joy, hope and escapism through nature to children undergoing treatment for cancer. The planting is raised in these circular beds and is understated in silvery tones such as Artemisia and Salvia, but with punctuations of colour dotted throughout. The plants add scent to the garden at the height for a child to appreciate it. The plants are also low maintenance and resilient. What I thought was clever about this garden was how the colour comes from the hard landscaping. The raised borders are made from terracotta blocks and the flooring is crushed brick. When I saw this garden on TV after a wet day, I wasn't that keen on the colour. It looked bright orange, but seeing this garden in real life and on a sunny day, we loved it. It was reminiscent of a hot Mediterranean escape. If you want to be bolder still and add vibrant colour, then look to Sarah Raven to add a bit of pizzazz, and it was great to see Sarah's very colourful stand. I'm a big fan of her plants. I listen to her podcast, and anything she recommends I've always found to be great. I've grown lots of her plants from seed, which is the most cost-effective way, and once you have them it's easy to save the seed for the following year, meaning that you can add a few more every year and quickly build a large variety very cheaply, enough to fill any garden. But for wacky colour, we need to go back in time to the 70s. This installation by Plants by There, entitled Verdant Visions, encapsulated an era when houseplants ruled, split into 3 areas representing different rooms in the house. The vibrant 70s decor, but with a contemporary twist, serves to shout about houseplants and ensure they receive the attention they deserve in a modern age. Soundtracked with nostalgic tunes, this space was fantastic on every level, so much fun. We will head now back to the show gardens, as the next point I want to make is how framing a view can be a very effective tool in garden design. We saw that point when we studied the beautiful gardens of Woolwich Old Hall, and here we can see how the pros do it well. The next garden, the Forest Bathing Garden for Muscular Dystrophy UK, is designed by Ulla Maria and won Best in Show. It has many of the elements that we've already discussed, such as muted colours of greens and whites in the planting and grey in the slate and flint. It also has at its centre a rill with naturalised edges showcasing the potential to capture runoff water and create habitats. Both the chosen colour palette and the gentle movement of water create the feeling of a sanctuary, as was the intention, but it's the flint wall that frames the planting beyond that really makes this garden stand out. The backstory of the wall too is memorable. The patterned surface of napped flint wall is reminiscent of muscle cells and serves as a tool for explaining the effects of muscular dystrophy. It serves to draw the eye and accentuate the beauty of the bark on the birch grove beyond. The volume of trees, more than 50 in total, would certainly give the users of this garden the associated health benefits that come from the Japanese practice of forest bathing. We loved this garden and thought it was a worthy winner. The next very grand show garden is called the St James's Piccadilly, Imagine the World to be Different, and was designed by Robert Mayers. This garden uses windows and arches to frame the view beyond and celebrates the restorative power of green spaces in cities, encouraging future generations to imagine these spaces differently. At the heart of this garden is the architect Sir Christopher Wren's St James's Church, to where this garden will be relocated. The planting in this garden is beautiful and is inspired by an eclectic mix of plants found in urban pocket parks and churchyards, some of which, like St James's, bear the scars of wartime bombing. The planting is mostly greens, drawing on textural foliage plants with splashes of colour and a few pioneer plants such as chickweed, speedwell and vetch that acknowledge the resilience and regeneration. I love the combination of these plants, but some of these plants are quite common plants that we have growing in our own gardens, and this effect would be quite easy to achieve. Here we see this lovely Pittosporum tubera. Haven't got this one, but it looks lovely and one I'd like to get. And then we've got it here with the white valerian and Alchemilla mollis, common plants. And here with this very light breezy grass called Brisa media. I've grown Brisa maxima, so this is a slightly different version. There was no plant list with this garden, but I did manage to take some photos, so we'll zoom in and just have a look at some of the plants that we see in this garden. So as well as this lovely grass, the Brisa media, it's also here with this Sanguisorba. This is a very upright, erect form of Sanguisorba, and I believe it's called Pride Mary. Another garden, and this time the Bridgerton Garden by Holly Johnson, uses a moongate to frame the view beyond of an ornate water feature, but the moongate also serves to create separation and divide the space. This garden is based on the Netflix series Bridgerton. On one side of the moongate, the garden reflects themes of secrecy, mystery and turmoil, reflecting a young woman's coming of age as she grapples with her hidden identity and navigates the expectations of society. On the other side, the planting reflects a full bloom effect, symbolic of Penelope embracing her true self and coming out into the light. I think this is a traditional and rather romantic looking garden. The planting on one side is made up of betula, and the green mounds on both sides are Prunus lusitanica. We have these as umbrella trees in our garden, but it's a good idea to use them in place of boxballs as they do take a good prune. The wisteria on the arch adds to the romantic feel, and to me looks very familiar as my parents' garden features a very similar arch complete with wisteria. On the other side, the planting is of a brighter planting palette with zesty swathes of Rudolphia and that lovely plum colour we keep seeing, only this time in the form of lupins, and these are called Lupin's Masterpiece. And there are little splashes of blue from some irises called Perry's Blue, and also a bit more blue in the form of some Campanula Tachyon Blue. And what a lovely tree with this fissured rough bark. This is an Ulmus minor variety suberosa, commonly known as cork-barked elm. Looking at all these gardens so far, the planting style that is very much in vogue is a looser, naturalistic feel. We've moved away from the wilder extreme from last year's show, when weeds featured heavily in a lot of the gardens, and we've settled on what not only looks great, but is great for wildlife too. I, for one, really much prefer this style. Let's now explore some different ways of introducing this look into our gardens. This garden, the Bridge to 2030 garden by Matthew Childs, tells the story of people living with HIV and how the fear and death associated with it has been replaced with hope. The garden is built onto slate and is reminiscent of a disused slate quarry. The garden uses a naturalistic planting style, and plants appear as though they are growing naturally, seeding themselves in rock crevices, and shows that a natural feel can even be achieved in quite inhospitable sites. Now the next garden illustrates this wilder, naturalistic style of planting perfectly. This is the RHS No Adults Allowed garden by Harry Holding, and it was built with the help of local children to inspire him on what kids really wanted from a garden. This is a magical, immersive space for imagination to run wild, so it encourages children to reconnect with nature. This garden allows them to splash in the water, climb on the rocks, and generally immerse themselves in the planting and lose themselves in a voyage of discovery. And something to get any child excited was a natural subterranean den set within a pool of water and accessed using an underwater slide. But unable to have a go, I was nonetheless equally excited to see this very unusual tree. This is Chionanthus retusus, also known as Chinese fringe tree, because it produces these white, long petalled flowers that give this fringe appearance. Chion means snow and anthus means flower. It is a small, slow-growing tree that has a multi-stemmed, attractive, sometimes peeling grey-brown bark and yellow autumn leaf colour. This is a new one on me and I loved it, but so did the judges, as it won Best Tree in Show. Two more gardens that are on a domestic scale but achieve that relaxed style which seems to appear effortless. The first one is the Killick & Co. Money Doesn't Grow on Trees by Baz Granger, and represents the difficulties families are facing navigating their finances. A beautiful seating area beneath the steel pergola is supported by 6 stone pillars. The planting is relaxed with small dainty plants such as Geranium Dreamland and Scabiosa Cudo White, which highlights the benefits of saving little and often. The planting is relaxed and informal in a soothing palette, informed by colour therapy to reduce anxiety and to relieve stress, something which I think most of us would benefit from. Herbs such as rosemary, mint, fennel and lavender offer olfactory escape too from everyday strains of modern life. The final garden is the RHS Britain in Bloom 60th anniversary, the Friendship Garden by James and John Wheatley. This garden felt familiar, and it struck me that it featured a plant quite unusual at Chelsea, and that is just plain old grass, which most of us enjoy in our own gardens but is very rarely seen in show gardens. This garden is a celebration of the effort and positive impact of community gardeners across the UK, and hopes to demonstrate that gardening doesn't have to be complicated or exclusive. I love the beautiful natural wood of these benches, which they've called friendship benches, and they're located throughout the garden and encourage people to mix and make connections either with other people or with the sights and sounds that surround them. The planting, we've got little scabious, and we've got that cirsium again. We're seeing a lot of cirsium, that deep dark purple. And adjacent to the well-cut lawn there is this wildflower meadow, and you can get different mixes of seeds depending on different locations, different colours that you want, and it can all be rather complicated. But one company who incidentally won Best Product at last year's Chelsea Flower Show was Lindum Wildflowers. So we spotted them at the show and went and had a chat to find out a bit more about it. And it turns out this couldn't be more simple. They sell just one product, and it has been refined to give the best blend at the correct ratios, so it takes away all the guesswork and guarantees the best results. And here is their product. It comes in a plastic-free turf, which will require cutting once or twice a year. I will leave a list in the description of all the plants contained within it. This beautiful green garden with a name that I can't begin to announce is beautiful, and I'm sure as you're watching this video you probably already know about the benefits that gardening and green spaces can bring, and all the gardens at Chelsea will live on at various locations to bring these benefits of being immersed in plants to others. But some projects go a little bit further and introduce the task of gardening and that feeling of getting your hands in the soil to people who may not otherwise have experienced it. So let's all do our bit to grow horticulture within our communities, and this can be done in many ways, but even simple acts of splitting plants and propagating plants to share with friends, neighbours, family or even strangers gives an instant bond and may spark and ignite something special. I'm always giving plants away and I love it. Sharing this joy is a responsibility of us all. So this project, called The Glass House, is an incredible not-for-profit social enterprise which harnesses the powerful benefits of horticulture to support women in prison with an aim to break that cycle of reoffending. The Glass House provides training, paid work and resettlement to women to nurture and grow beautiful houseplants which are then sold. The results have been incredible and have resulted in a 0% reoffending rate, so that's just such a positive message. So by performing a practical skill, it's a great way to discuss difficult topics. So instead of the daunting feeling of talking to someone face to face in a therapy situation, this is far less intimidating and can cut through all sorts of barriers. So it works in this situation with offenders, but it's also really good with people coming to terms with life-changing illnesses. It's great too for people with mental or physical disabilities or dementia, and also for children. And we'll head now into the Great Pavilion to another project. So this next project is called the Pulp Friction Growing Skills Garden and is a social enterprise that works with people who have learning disabilities or autism to develop social independence and work readiness skills, and demonstrates what people can achieve with the right support. This garden has been developed by this small organisation and was incredible, and we spoke at length to several of the members and heard firsthand their passion for the project. You will notice this halo effect in the garden, and if you look closely you'll see that it's actually made of a fire hose, and this is because Nottingham Fire and Rescue Service work closely with this charity, giving them a place in which to meet. As well as a silver gilt medal, this garden won a People's Choice Award too. Let's have a quick look at some of the plants and features in this garden. So some lovely trees and shrubs, including Betula pendula, Corylus maxima purpurea, and Sambuca nigra. And other plants include that lovely grass, yet again, Brisa media doddering dillies, and the splash of orange comes from Calendula officinalis Indian prince. And again, that colour theme repeated, the dark purple, this time from the poppies, Papaver somniferum Lawrence grape, again, the same one we saw before. I think we know what the in colours are this year. And the little extras which add more layers of interest to this garden include the gabions made with recycled material, which the members had fun collecting, and add habitat for nature, as well as giving the garden a structural but unobtrusive boundary. And these cute little wooden seats are a really fun touch too. As well as the 5 themes that we've discussed, I just wanted to highlight 5 other plants that I loved and which I haven't discussed so far. Of course, we had to include the new rose from David Austin because we love their roses, and this is a beautifully romantic looking shrub rose which celebrates the union of 2 heritage British brands, and that's David Austin roses and M. Bridgewater. And with a flower that can thrive in the garden and then an image that can last on a painted Emma Bridgewater mug. This rose appears pink yet orange at its centre, which appears sort of bright in coral pink tones, but which gradually fades to mauve and kind of lilac. It looks really intriguing, doesn't it? And of course you'll want to know about the winner of this year's Plant of the Year, and this is Prunus Starlight. So this is a new winter and spring ornamental flowering cherry, which has exceptionally attractive and unusual star-shaped pure white flowers. It has a profuse flowering habit in late March that extends well into April, and while there can also be a smattering of flowers over winter, it has a good resistance to frost damage, and it's a healthy grower, robust, glossy foliage and a graceful habit. Look out for this, this would make a great tree for a small garden. And number 3, it's back. Remember broom? I didn't like it much either, but perhaps we need to think again, because this one, called Cytisus lena, looked rather nice. It's a great plant for dry gardens with free draining soil. It featured in the Stroke Association garden and brought that fashionable orange hue with its arching stems. And we also spotted this red version, which is called Boscop Ruby, on the Burden Coast nursery stand, and this brings that intense red to any planting scheme. So number 4, now a few little dainty woodland treasures on this gold-winning medal stand by Kevitt Gardens. But I wanted to show you this one. Look at this sweet little primula. This is called Cockburniana, and that colour again, that combination, only this time with Anemonastrum trulifolium. Don't you think that's gorgeous? Those orange and purple colours, how they look so good together. And my 5th and final plant that I wanted to point out was one we saw on the Octavia Hill garden. You can't see it so well in this footage, but you might be able to spot in the distance some yellow dots throughout the planting. And it's something that I'm growing for the first time this year. It's called Craspedia globosa. I love the name of that too. And we're used to seeing that spherical shape that's so valuable in a garden coming from alliums, and we've seen alliums all over the place this year. But this one is really good because it gives that spherical shape but in a yellow colour. It's usually grown as an annual,
but it also makes really good dried flowers, one of the reasons why I'm growing it. And I bought the seeds from Chiltern Seeds, which I've now found out had a stand at Chelsea, and I completely missed it, and I'm really upset about that. So because it looks gorgeous and goes to show that even though we were there for 10 hours, we still didn't see everything. And here it is again in this incredible display from the Plant Warehouse. This was a stand with demonstrating how you can grow houseplants. It was in the houseplant studio. So look at the ways in which all these houseplants are being grown, and here's the Cruspedia just at the front of the display, and doesn't it look good? So I'm back now in my own garden. I hope you enjoyed that visit to the Chelsea Flower Show. It certainly has provided us with lots of inspiration for our own gardens. And I just wanted to say hello to some of the subscribers that I met at Chelsea. It was really, really lovely to meet you, and amazing that you'd come from all over the world to be at Chelsea. And it can be quite overstimulating and overwhelming being at Chelsea, because there's just so much to see, and this video is just the tip of the iceberg of what there was to see. And I find that even the night before I can't sleep because I get so excited about going. So I've been feeling quite exhausted after being there, and just simply taking some time just to process everything that we saw. And if I felt tired, you can imagine how exhausting it must be for all the builders and the landscapers after 3 weeks of intensive building and then 1 week of the show. So it's a lot of time and money and effort that goes into putting that show together. And if you want to see a behind the scenes look at how it's all done, then head to Ollie Gunn's YouTube channel. I'll leave a link in the description. Ollie is a landscape contractor, and Al watches all his videos with great interest. And he was interested to share Ollie's involvement with Chelsea with me, and it was really interesting to watch. He helped on the Octavia Hill garden, and it gives us a behind the scenes look at the trials and tribulations that they face. And incidentally, the tree I mentioned earlier had to be replaced just 24 hours before judging because the leaves started to curl. So things like that, all these things that happen that we don't realise, but everything's done just to make it all look perfect for us. And the final point I wanted to make was about the construction. And we've all become more aware in recent years of the detrimental environmental impact of building walls and buildings in Chelsea, whereby these concrete structures have to be taken down just a week later, and it seemed quite hard to justify. So all the gardens are judged against this green sheet. This is the judging criteria that every garden is judged against. But before a garden design is even approved, it must conform to a sustainable framework goal, and this includes waste, carbon, biodiversity and ecologies, water and air. So all gardens are measured by these, and all gardens must have an onward journey, so they can't just kind of end up in a skip. Everything has to have somewhere to go afterwards. So in days gone by, we've seen designs limited purely by the designer's imagination. We saw some, really weird and wacky designs in the 80s and 90s. However, now environmental considerations are paramount. Companies and landscapers have been working to develop products and methods that have a low carbon footprint, such as cement-free concrete, using crushed waste instead of paving, or perhaps using offcuts of wood for raised planters. And they're also using strocks in place of bricks and using lime mortar. So all these things go to make the garden more environmentally friendly. And the creation of all these new products, I think, has resulted in this year's Chelsea including bigger and bolder structural forms once more. So it was really good to see that. I find all this quite interesting. It's not all about what the garden simply looks like, but also the work, the sentiment and the people behind them. So Olivia, my daughter, who is studying landscape architecture and who you will have seen in the video, is beginning her journey into designing and building her very first show garden at this year's Tatton Park Flower Show. So I very much hope that you can join us on this roller coaster. She will explain all about it when she comes home. She's back from uni in a few weeks. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and I hope you will join us. And I'll just play you out with this aerial shot of our garden. Josh was home, my son, and did a drone footage of the garden. So just so you get a bit of bearing on our garden for future videos. So see you in the next video. Bye for now.